It was a calm Thursday morning, the kind of morning where nothing special usually happens. The sun had just started to rise, casting soft light across the quiet road that led out of town. A young woman named Lena was driving her small old car to work. She had a cup of coffee beside her, a soft tune playing on the radio, and a mind full of thoughts she couldn't quite shake. Life had been hard lately. Bills were piling up. Her job at the local store barely paid enough, and she had no time to rest. But even in all that, she carried a kind heart. She always told herself that no matter how rough things got, she would never stop being kind. The road was mostly empty that morning. The air was crisp and the world still felt half asleep. Lena liked that time of day. It gave her a few quiet moments before the rush of work and noise began. She turned a corner and slowed down as she reached a long stretch of road lined with tall trees. The sky was painted in shades of pink and gold. She breathed deeply, trying to hold on to the calm feeling. Not far ahead, a black SUV was moving fast. It looked new, shiny, and expensive, the kind of car she could never afford. Lena didn't think much of it. Rich people drove past her every day. She just stayed in her lane and kept going. But in the next few seconds, everything changed. Out of nowhere, a loud screech filled the air. The SUV swerved sharply, hitting the side railing. Lena's eyes widened. It happened so fast that she barely had time to react. The car skidded across the road, flipped once, and landed hard on its side. A cloud of dust and smoke rose into the air. Then came the sound she would never forget. The soft cry of a child mixed with the crackle of fire. Lena slammed her brakes and jumped out of her car. A few other drivers stopped too, but most stayed frozen in fear. The SUV was now on fire, flames spreading quickly from the hood to the doors. Inside, she could see movement. A small child strapped in the back seat crying. Her heart dropped. Someone shouted, "Call for help." Another yelled, "It's going to explode." But no one moved closer. Everyone just watched. Lena's chest tightened. She looked around. No one was doing anything. The fire was growing fast. The smoke made it hard to see inside the car, but she could still hear the child crying. That sound tore through her. She couldn't just stand there. Without thinking twice, Lena ran toward the car. The heat hit her face like an open oven. The smell of burning fuel filled the air. Someone screamed at her to stop, but she didn't even hear it clearly. Her heart was pounding so loud it drowned everything else out. The driver's side was crushed. The front door was bent inward, flames licking the edges. She ran to the back and tried to open the rear door, but it was jammed. She coughed as thick smoke filled her lungs. Her eyes burned. She pulled at the handle again, nothing. Her hands were shaking. For a second, she thought she might have to give up, but then she saw the small face pressed against the glass. The child was terrified, his tiny hands reaching toward her. That was all it took. Something deep inside her refused to let go. She took off her jacket, wrapped it around her arm, and smashed the window with all her strength. The glass shattered, cutting her hand slightly, but she didn't care. She reached in through the smoke, coughing hard, and tried to unbuckle the seatbelt. It was stuck. She tugged again and again, her vision blurring from the heat. Finally, it came loose. The child was barely 2 or 3 years old, tears streaming down his face. Lena lifted him out carefully, shielding his head from the glass edges. The moment she pulled him free, she heard another small explosion from under the hood. She stumbled back, holding the child close, and ran as fast as she could away from the car. Just seconds later, a loud blast shook the ground. The SUV went up in flames behind her. The people who had been watching rushed forward now. Someone grabbed a blanket, another called the paramedics again. Lena fell to her knees, still clutching the child tightly. He was crying but alive. His little fingers gripped her shirt and she whispered softly, "You're okay. You're safe now." Her hands were trembling. The smell of smoke clung to her clothes. She could feel the sting of small burns on her arm, but she barely noticed. All she could see was the child, breathing, blinking up at her with wide eyes. A woman ran over and wrapped the child in a clean cloth. "You saved him," she said breathlessly. "You actually saved him?" Lena didn't say anything. She just nodded, still dazed. It all felt unreal, like something out of a movie. She looked at the burning car again. The driver was being pulled out by 2 men. He was unconscious but alive. The sound of sirens filled the air soon after. Firefighters rushed to control the flames while paramedics checked the victims. Someone led Lena to sit down on the grass. Her hands were shaking badly now, her throat dry from smoke. One of the paramedics knelt beside her. "Miss, are you all right? You inhaled a lot of smoke." "I'm fine," she said, her voice hoarse. "Just Make sure the baby's okay." He nodded and walked away quickly. She watched as they placed the child on a stretcher, checking his breathing. He started to cry again, in a strong, healthy sound. Relief washed over her. That was when the shock began to fade, replaced by quiet tears she couldn't stop. People started taking photos, some filming with their phones. Lena looked away, embarrassed. She didn't want attention. She hadn't done it for that. She just couldn't bear the thought of standing by while a child burned alive. When the police asked for her name, she hesitated. "It's not important," she said softly. "I just happened to be there." But they insisted, and she finally gave them her first name. Then she quietly got up, walked to her car, and sat inside, staring out the window as if trying to process what had just happened. Her hands still smelled of smoke. Her palms were raw, her arm hurt, but she didn't feel pain yet, just an overwhelming wave of emotion. She watched the fire truck hoses spray the remains of the car until the flames turned to smoke. The morning sun had fully risen now, bright and unforgiving, shining on a scene that felt too heavy for words. Before she drove away, she glanced once more at the little boy being carried into the ambulance. He was wrapped in a white blanket, his face pale but calm now. A paramedic shut the doors and the siren started again. Lena whispered to herself, "Be okay, little one," then turned the key and slowly drove away. Her drive to work was silent. The music on the radio no longer played. The air felt thick. Every few minutes she replayed the moment in her mind. The heat, the smoke, the glass shattering, the sound of the child crying. Her heart still raced each time she remembered. She gripped the steering wheel tighter. She didn't feel brave. She felt shaken. Anyone would have done the same, she told herself, but deep down she knew not everyone would have. She didn't think of herself as a hero, though. She just couldn't live with the thought of doing nothing. When she reached her workplace, she was late. Her manager scolded her at first, not knowing what had just happened. Lena just nodded quietly and went to the back room to wash her face. As she looked in the mirror, she saw the soot on her cheeks and the small cut on her arm. She felt strange, not proud, not scared, just heavy. She didn't tell anyone. She went back to her shift like it was any other day. By the afternoon, the story was already spreading online. "Unknown woman saves toddler from burning SUV," the headline said. Videos from bystanders were being shared everywhere. But Lena had no idea. She didn't check her phone much. She just wanted the day to end. She wanted to go home and forget the smell of smoke that still lingered in her hair. That night, when she finally turned on the TV, she froze. The same scene replayed on the news. The wreckage, the fire, the child being carried away. And there, blurry but unmistakable, was her face as she ran from the burning car holding the toddler. The reporter called her a hero. The anchor said the powerful businessman whose child was saved was searching for the woman who risked her life for his son. Lena stared at the screen, heart pounding. She didn't know he was someone important. She didn't even think about who he was, just that he was a father whose child could have died. She turned the TV off and sat in silence for a long time. Outside, the city lights flickered. Cars passed. Life went on. But for Lena, everything felt different now. Something had shifted. In her heart, in her life, in the air around her. She didn't know it yet, but that one brave act had started a chain of events that would soon turn her simple world upside down. The next few days passed in a blur. Lena tried to keep her routine, but everything around her felt louder now. Every time she stepped outside, someone recognized her. A neighbor would stop her to say thank you. A stranger at the grocery store would whisper, "That's her," as she walked past. It made her feel uneasy. She didn't like attention. She liked quiet mornings and simple days. One afternoon, she turned off her phone to get a break from all the calls. The moment she did, there was a knock on the door. When she opened it, a young woman stood there holding a bouquet of white lilies. "Mr. Hale asked me to give these to you," the woman said. "His son is out of the hospital now. He wanted to see you if you're willing." Lena hesitated. She wanted to say no. She didn't save that boy to be thanked again. But something inside her told her to go. Maybe seeing him healthy would help her sleep at night. When she arrived at the big house on the hill, she felt out of place. The gate opened slowly, revealing a long driveway lined with trimmed trees. The place looked like nothing from a different world. Inside, everything smelled of polished wood and fresh flowers. A maid led her into a large room filled with sunlight. The boy sat on a rug near the window, surrounded by toys. He looked up when she entered, eyes wide, a smile spreading across his small face. "You're the lady," he said softly, his voice shy but sure. Lena knelt beside him. "Hello there," she said. "How are you feeling?" He nodded, holding out a small toy car as if to show her he was fine. "Daddy says you saved me," he whispered. "I remember the fire." Lena's heart ached at his words. She touched his hair gently. "It's over now," she said. "You're safe." Mr. Hale entered the room then. He looked different than before, less like the powerful businessman she'd met at City Hall, and more like a father who hadn't slept enough. "He's been asking for you," he said quietly. "Every night. He calls you the brave lady." Lena smiled awkwardly. "He's a strong little boy," she said. Mr. Hale nodded and sat across from her. "He's alive because of you," he said. "I still can't believe how close I came to losing him." Lena didn't know what to say. She didn't want his gratitude. She didn't even know what to do with it. She looked at the boy again. His laughter filled the room as he played, and that sound was enough for her. They talked for a while. About nothing important, just small things. Mr. Hale asked about her job, her family, her life. Lena spoke simply. She didn't have much family left, she said. Her parents had passed years ago. She worked at a small store, rented a tiny apartment, and lived quietly. She didn't complain. At one point, Mr. Hale said, "You remind me of someone I used to know, someone who believed that goodness still existed in people." Lena just smiled. "It does," she said softly. "It's just that sometimes we forget to look for it." He watched her as if her words stayed with him. There was something heavy in his eyes, something like guilt or regret. She didn't ask why. When she stood to leave, the boy ran to her and wrapped his small arms around her legs. "Come back again," he said. "Please?" She hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come see you soon." As she drove home that evening, the world outside seemed softer. The sky was pink, the air calm. For the first time in days, Lena felt peace. But deep inside, she also felt something shifting. She didn't know it yet, but her life was slowly becoming entangled with theirs. The next morning, she went back to work. Her co-workers greeted her differently now, with admiration, even pride. One of them said, "You're famous, you know that? Everyone's talking about you." Lena laughed it off, though fame was the last thing she wanted. Later that week, she got another call, this time from Mr. Hale himself. His voice was calm but firm. "I know you said no before, but I'd like to help you," he said. "Not as payment. Just because you deserve better?" Lena frowned. "You don't owe me anything," she said. "I know," he replied. "But sometimes doing something kind isn't about owing. It's just about wanting to make things right." There was silence on the line. For a moment, Lena almost agreed. The bills were piling up. Her rent was late, but her pride wouldn't let her accept. "Thank you," she said softly. "But I'm fine," he didn't argue. He just said, "If you ever need anything, you have my number." Days turned into weeks. Lena's life slowly began to settle again, though she still thought of the child often. She would see pictures of Mr. Hale and his son in the papers sometimes, attending charity events, smiling for cameras. Each time she felt a quiet warmth knowing he was safe. Then one evening, as she returned from work, she found an envelope slipped under her door. Inside was a simple note. "Thank you again. You saved more than one life that day." There was no signature, but she knew who it was from. She placed the note on her table and stared at it for a long time. Those words echoed in her head. Saved more than one life. In truth, she hadn't thought about how that day had changed her too. Before the fire, her days had all felt the same. Quiet, small, unimportant. But since then, something inside her had awakened. She had faced fear and survived it. She had looked death in the eye and chosen to fight for someone else. That realization gave her strength. One Sunday afternoon, she went to visit the child again. When she arrived, the boy was in the garden, laughing as he chased butterflies. Mr. Hale was nearby, watching quietly. He smiled when he saw her. "He's been waiting for you," he said. The boy ran to her and held out a tiny yellow flower. "For you," he said proudly. Lena took it and smiled. "It's beautiful." "Thank you." Mr. Hale watched the exchange silently, his expression thoughtful. After a while, he said, "You know, you've changed him. He used to be afraid of everything after the accident. But when you visit, he's different, braver, happier. Lena looked at the boy who was now showing her his drawings on the grass. "He's the brave one," she said quietly. "He's the one who fought through it." Mr. Hale nodded. "Maybe," he said. "But sometimes courage shows up through someone else first." "You gave him that." For a moment neither of them spoke. The garden was filled with soft laughter and birdsong. Lena felt something gentle stir in her heart. Respect, connection, maybe even friendship. As the evening light faded, she stood to leave. The boy waved at her from the steps. "See you soon, brave lady," he called out. Lena smiled, waving back. "See you soon." Driving home, she felt lighter. The world no longer felt as heavy as it did that morning after the fire. She realized that sometimes, helping someone else also heals parts of yourself you didn't know were broken. That night, she wrote in her small notebook, a habit she rarely kept. She wrote, "Maybe we don't need to do big things to change a life. Sometimes one small act at the right moment is enough." She closed the book and turned off the light. The city hummed quietly outside, and somewhere a child slept peacefully. For the first time in a long while, Lena slept peacefully too, unaware that her story with that family was far from over. When the doorbell rang that morning, Lena thought it was just another visitor from the neighborhood. But when she opened the door and saw a man in a dark suit standing there, she froze for a second. Behind him stood another man, older, wearing a simple shirt and looking tired but kind. His eyes told a story that words couldn't. The man in the suit spoke politely. "Miss Lena, Mr. Hale would like to see you. If you're comfortable, he's waiting in the car." Lena hesitated. She didn't expect him to come all the way here. After the accident, she thought he had probably forgotten her, or maybe didn't want to make things awkward. She looked down at her hands, still marked faintly from the burns that hadn't completely healed. After a moment, she said softly, "Please tell him he can come in if he wishes. I don't like leaving my mother alone." They nodded, and soon the man she had only seen on television, the powerful businessman whose son she'd saved, stepped into her small living room. He looked very different from the confident figure people saw in magazines. His face was pale and there were dark circles under his eyes. For a long moment, no one spoke. He finally broke the silence. "I've been trying to find you for weeks," he said quietly. "You didn't leave your name at the hospital. You disappeared before I could even thank you." Lena smiled faintly. "I didn't do it for thanks. I just did what I had to do." He shook his head. "You didn't have to do anything. You risked your life for my child. That's something I can never repay." He placed a small box on the table. Inside was a key and a letter. "This is for you. A new home. Somewhere comfortable. It's the least I can offer." Lena looked at the box, then looked back at him. Her expression softened, but she gently pushed it back toward him. "I can't accept that. I'm fine here. You don't owe me anything." He looked at her with disbelief. People in his world rarely said no. Money was how he solved everything. But this woman, this ordinary, quiet woman, seemed untouched by it. He took a deep breath. "Then please at least let me do something. Maybe help your mother with her treatment, or your job. Anything." She shook her head again. "You don't understand. When I ran toward that car, I wasn't thinking of who was inside. It could have been anyone. I just didn't want a child to die in front of me. That's all." There was silence again. He studied her, trying to understand how someone could be so selfless in a world where everyone wanted something in return. Just then, a small voice came from behind him. "Is it her, Papa?" Lena looked up, surprised. The little boy, the one she had pulled from the flames, was standing at the door holding the hand of a nanny. His big eyes lit up when he saw her. He ran toward her and threw his tiny arms around her waist. "You're the lady who saved me," he said, his voice full of joy. Lena's eyes softened instantly. She knelt down and hugged him gently, careful not to frighten him. "Hey, little hero," she said with a warm smile. "You're looking much better now." The man, Mr. Hale, watched quietly, emotion filling his eyes. That small moment, seeing his son alive, laughing, safe, made him realize just how deeply he owed this woman. The boy didn't want to let go of her hand, so they all sat down for tea. For the first time in weeks, the house felt warm and alive. The conversation was simple, about how the boy was healing, how he had nightmares at first but was getting better, and how grateful the father was for everything. Before leaving, Mr. Hale said softly, "You may not want help, but please, let me visit sometimes. My son keeps asking about you." He calls you the brave lady. Lena smiled and nodded. You can visit, but please no gifts, no news cameras. Just let the boy be a child again. He agreed, and from that day onward, their paths began to cross more often. At first, it was just small visits, bringing the boy by to say hello, or dropping off a basket of fruits for Lena's mother. But slowly, something deeper started forming. It wasn't romance, not yet. It was something quieter. Respect, connection, and gratitude. Lena's neighbors began to notice the fancy cars parked outside her small home. Some whispered behind her back, saying she must be using the incident to climb the social ladder. Others said she was being foolish for turning down money. She heard the whispers but never reacted. Her mother, however, worried. People can be cruel, her mother said one evening as they had dinner. Be careful, my dear. You don't owe anyone anything, not even him. Lena smiled softly. I know, Mama, but he's not like what people think. He's lonely. I can see it in his eyes, and she was right. Behind his success, Mr. Hale was a man broken by guilt. His wife had passed away years ago, and he had thrown himself into work, leaving his son mostly in the care of nannies. The accident had shaken him to his core, not just because of what happened, but because it forced him to see how far he'd drifted from what truly mattered. Each time he visited, Lena noticed small changes in him. He smiled more often. He spent time with his son, not just watching but playing, laughing. Sometimes he even helped Lena's mother with her garden or shared stories about his late wife. One afternoon, as they all sat together on the porch, the boy asked Lena, "Why did you save me?" She thought for a moment, then said gently, "Because if I were you, I would want someone to save me too." He seemed to think about that deeply. "Does that mean you're my guardian angel?" Lena laughed softly. "No, little one. I'm just a person who was there at the right time." Mr. Hale smiled faintly, watching them. He had seen many kinds of people in his life, clever, powerful, ambitious, but never someone so quietly brave. As weeks turned into months, he began inviting Lena and her mother to his house for dinners. It wasn't about showing off. It was about gratitude. But each time she felt slightly out of place in his grand home. The marble floors, chandeliers, and silent servants made her uncomfortable. She preferred her small house where laughter and warmth filled the air. Still she went, not for him but for the boy. He had grown attached to her, and she couldn't bring herself to say no when he begged her to come. One evening after dinner, Mr. Hale walked her to the gate. The air was cool, and the city lights shimmered in the distance. "Do you ever regret what you did that day?" he asked quietly. She looked up at him, surprised. "No, why would I?" "Because it changed everything for both of us," he said. "For me, it reminded me how fragile life is. For you, it must have brought a lot of attention you didn't want." She nodded slowly. "Maybe, but sometimes things happen for a reason. Maybe I was meant to be there that day." He smiled, a genuine one this time. "Maybe you were." What neither of them realized was that people were already talking, newspapers, speculated about their friendship, social media, buzzed with stories about the unknown woman who caught a billionaire's eye. Some even twisted the story, saying Lena was trying to use sympathy for her own gain. One morning, Lena woke to find reporters outside her door. Cameras flashing, voices shouting questions. She felt dizzy and scared. When Mr. Hale found out, he was furious. He released a public statement defending her, calling her the bravest person I've ever met. He said she asked for nothing but gave everything. That act silenced most of the gossip, but it also brought them closer. He began to protect her not out of guilt but out of respect. But despite everything, Lena remained the same. She still walked to work, cared for her mother, and spent her evenings tending her small garden. Fame didn't change her, and if anything, it made her quieter, more thoughtful. And even though the world saw a powerful man and a humble woman in two different worlds, what truly existed between them was something pure. The bond born out of a single brave act that neither of them could forget. That night, as she sat by her window watching the city lights, Lena thought about how strange life could be. One moment you're just living your normal routine, and the next, everything changes. She didn't know where life was taking her. But one thing she knew for sure. Saving that little boy had not just changed his life. It had changed hers too. Time passed quietly after the media storm settled down. Lena returned to her ordinary life, and Mr. Hale tried to bring normalcy back to his. Yet something invisible kept connecting their lives. They would meet often, not because of any reason, but because it simply felt right. The little boy would visit Lena every weekend, and together they would spend hours in her small garden, watering plants, feeding birds, and laughing about silly things. Lena's mother had grown fond of the boy too. She would watch them play from her chair near the window and smile softly. Sometimes she would whisper, "He brings light into this house, doesn't he?" And Lena would nod. One afternoon, when the boy and Lena were painting pebbles in the garden, Mr. Hale arrived unexpectedly. He looked tense, his eyes tired, his phone buzzing every few minutes. She could tell something was troubling him. He sat quietly for a while, watching his son laugh freely for the first time in days. After a long silence, he finally spoke. "I got a call from the investigators," he said slowly. "They found out something about the crash." Lena looked up from the pebbles, her hands still stained with paint. "What did they find?" His jaw tightened. "It wasn't just an accident. Someone tampered with the brakes." The words hung heavy in the air. Lena froze for a moment. "You mean someone wanted to hurt you?" He nodded. "They think it was a business rival, someone who wanted to send me a warning, but instead my son was the one almost taken from me." His voice cracked slightly. "I can't stop thinking about it." Lena's heart ached hearing the pain in his voice. She reached out, placing a gentle hand on his arm. "You can't live in fear," she said softly. "You have to stay strong as for him." She looked toward the boy who was still painting, unaware of their conversation. He nodded slowly. "I know, but it makes me question everything. The people I trusted, the things I built, none of it seems real anymore." She didn't know what to say, so she just stayed quiet, letting him gather his thoughts. After a while, he whispered, "If you hadn't been there that day, I don't think I could have survived losing him." Lena smiled faintly. "You don't need to keep thanking me. Just promise me you'll keep him safe." He met her eyes, and for a moment there was silence, the kind that speaks more than words ever could. From that day, things between them changed slightly. He became more protective, more careful about where he went and who he met. He began spending more time at home, focusing on his son, trying to make up for all the lost years. Lena noticed how different he was when he wasn't surrounded by business calls and assistants. Beneath the layers of formality, he was a man trying to rebuild his life, not with wealth, but with meaning. One evening, he invited Lena and her mother over for dinner again. The house looked different this time, softer, warmer, less like a mansion and more like a home. There were family photos on the walls, laughter echoing from the kitchen, and a peaceful calm in the air. After dinner, as the boy ran around chasing his dog, Lena found herself sitting with Mr. Hale on the terrace. The city lights sparkled below them. "You've changed," she said quietly. "You're not the same man who came to my house months ago." He chuckled softly. "Maybe you reminded me of what really matters," she smiled. "You don't need me for that. You just needed to slow down." He turned toward her. "Maybe. But sometimes it takes meeting the right person to realize it." Lena looked away, her heart beating a little faster. She didn't know what to say, so she changed the subject. "How's work?" "Are things calmer now?" He sighed. "Not really. When you have power, enemies come with it. But I'm learning not to let fear control my life." "That's good," she said softly. "Fear only wins when we stop living." As the night went on, they spoke about everything. Life, regrets, dreams. He told her how he lost his wife years ago to illness and how after that, he buried himself in work, trying to fill the emptiness. "I thought success would heal me," he admitted. "But it only made me lonelier." Lena listened quietly. "You can't fill a broken heart with money," she said gently. "But you can start again. You have your son, and you have a chance to be better." Her words stayed with him long after she left that night. The next morning, he made a decision. He closed one of his biggest business deals, the same one that had caused all the rivalry and tension, and decided to take time off. He took his son on a trip, far from the noise of the city. Before leaving, he stopped by Lena's house to say goodbye. "I'm taking him away for a few weeks," he said. "He needs peace." "And I think I do too," Lena smiled. "That's a good idea. You both deserve it." He hesitated before speaking again. "Would you come with us?" "Just for a few days." "My son would love that." She blinked, caught off guard. "Oh, I can't. My mother—" He interrupted softly. "Of course. I understand," she smiled. "Maybe another time." He nodded and left. During the weeks he was away, Lena felt a strange emptiness in her days. She had grown used to their visits, the laughter, the energy the little boy brought into her home. The silence, no. You felt heavy. She spent her evenings sitting by the window, watching the streetlights flicker, wondering how they were doing. When they finally returned, it was the boy who came running to her door first. He was tanned from the sun and full of stories. "We saw mountains and waterfalls. And Papa laughed so much," he said with excitement. Mr. Hale followed behind, looking more relaxed than she had ever seen him. "It was good for both of us," he said. "Thank you for encouraging me to go." They spent that afternoon catching up, and as the sun began to set, the boy dozed off on the couch. The soft orange glow filled the room, and for a moment, everything felt peaceful again. Mr. Hale looked around the small living room, the simple curtains, the old clock on the wall, the faint smell of home-cooked food. "You know," he said quietly, "I've been in the most expensive houses in the world, but none of them ever felt like this." Lena smiled gently. "Maybe because you can't buy peace. You have to build it?" He nodded, thinking about her words. "You make everything sound simple." "Life is simple," she said softly. "We just make it complicated." There was a long pause, the kind of pause that feels safe, but life has a way of testing peace. One evening, while Lena was returning home from the market, she noticed a black car parked across the street. It wasn't the first time she'd seen it. For days she had a feeling someone was watching. She told Mr. Hale the next day. His expression darkened instantly. "You should have told me earlier. It might be connected to what happened." He tightened security around both their homes, making sure his son was safe. For a few weeks things seemed calm again, but the tension lingered. Despite the fear, Lena refused to hide. "I won't let fear run my life," she told him firmly. And that courage, the same courage that had made her run toward a burning car, gave him strength too. He realized that courage wasn't just about facing danger. It was about living honestly, with compassion, no matter what. In the weeks that followed, they both grew even closer, not because of drama or wealth, but because they understood each other in ways no one else could. He taught her to trust again, and she reminded him how to feel alive again. One evening, as the boy played in the garden, Mr. Hale turned to Lena and said, "You've changed me in ways I can't explain." She smiled softly. "Maybe we just helped each other heal." He nodded. "Maybe that's what real kindness does. It heals everything it touches." That night, as she watched him drive away, Lena realized something she hadn't before. She wasn't just the woman who saved his son anymore. She had become part of their story, a quiet, steady presence that had turned pain into something beautiful. And though she didn't know what the future would bring, she felt peace, the kind that comes only when you know you've done something right. Not once, but every day since. The morning air was calm, and the sun had just started rising over the city. Lena sat on the balcony, watching the sky turn from gray to gold. Life had changed so much in the past few months, yet she still felt the same inside. Quiet, grounded, thankful. She never planned to be part of anyone's story, but somehow, fate had placed her right in the middle of one. Mr. Hale's son had started school again. He was growing fast, full of life and laughter, always asking when he could visit the brave lady and her garden. Every weekend he would come over carrying little gifts, pebbles, drawings, flowers, saying he picked them just for her. One Saturday, when they were sitting under the big tree, he handed her a drawing. It showed a stick figure woman holding a small child in front of a car with fire drawn in red and orange. Underneath, in clumsy handwriting, he had written, "My hero." Lena smiled warmly and hugged him. "You're my hero too," she whispered. The boy grinned, proud of his work, not realizing how deeply his words touched her. That same evening, Mr. Hale arrived. He looked lighter now, as if a weight had finally lifted from his shoulders. He brought fruits for Lena's mother and sat with them for tea. "You seem happier these days," Lena said, pouring him a cup. He nodded. "For the first time in years, I actually am." "You were right. I had to slow down." "You did," she replied with a smile. "You just needed a reason." He looked at her quietly, his eyes soft. "And I found one." There was silence between them, but it wasn't awkward. It was warm, filled with understanding that didn't need words. In the following weeks, their friendship deepened. They began talking every day, sometimes about serious things, sometimes about nothing at all. He would call to ask how her day went, and she would ask if he had eaten. It was simple yet comforting, like two lives gently fitting together without force. But peace doesn't last forever. One morning, a news article appeared online with the headline, "The Woman Who Saved the Billionaire's Son and Stole His Heart." Photos of Lena outside her home filled the screen. The story twisted their friendship into gossip. It claimed she was trying to win her way into a wealthy life. Lena was shocked when she saw it. Her hands trembled as she scrolled through the words. Her mother, too, looked worried. "People always find ways to spoil good things," she said softly. By the afternoon, reporters were outside again, shouting questions, taking pictures. It was just like before, only this time it felt worse. When Mr. Hale arrived, she looked at him with tearful eyes. "Why can't they just leave us alone?" He sighed deeply. "I'm sorry. This is my world's fault, not yours. I should have protected you better." She shook her head. "You don't have to apologize. I just don't like being treated like I did something wrong for being kind." He looked at her with quiet admiration. "You didn't do anything wrong, Lena. You gave me back my son's life. He ran my own. They can write whatever they want. I know the truth." He spoke with such calm certainty that it silenced her fear for a moment. Later that day, he held a press conference. Cameras flashed as he spoke, his voice steady and clear. "The woman you're calling names is the reason my son is alive," he said firmly. "She never asked for money, fame, or attention. She's the bravest person I've ever known. I will not let anyone disrespect her again." The video spread quickly, and soon the tone of the news changed. People started praising her again, calling her the woman with the purest heart. Still, Lena didn't care for the attention. She only wanted life to return to normal. She wanted quiet mornings, her small garden, and the laughter of the boy she had grown so fond of. Days later, when things calmed down again, Mr. Hale visited her once more. But this time he didn't come in his usual car. He came walking, wearing simple clothes, no assistants, no bodyguards. She was surprised. "You walked here?" he smiled. "I wanted to see what it feels like to come without all the noise." They sat outside under the evening sky, sipping tea. The air smelled of wet earth after a light rain. The boy played nearby, humming softly. Mr. Hale broke the silence. "Do you ever think about that day? The day of the accident?" she asked. "Yes," she nodded. "Sometimes. Not because of the fear, but because it reminds me how quickly life can change. I was just going to work that morning. And now," she smiled softly, "now my life feels different." He looked at her with quiet emotion. "That day changed me too. I used to think power meant control, but now I know real strength is something else. It's what you showed me that day. Courage, compassion, and heart." She blushed slightly and looked away. "Anyone would have done the same." He shook his head. "No, most people would have run the other way." There was a long pause. The sound of the boy laughing filled the space between them. "Do you ever wonder why things happen the way they do?" he asked suddenly. Lena smiled faintly. "All the time. But I think some people are just meant to cross paths. Maybe it's fate, maybe it's timing, but it happens for a reason." He looked down at his hands, then back at her. "Then I'm glad fate brought you into my life." His words hung in the air, soft, honest, without any pressure. It wasn't a confession, but it carried something deeper, something sincere. From that day on, they stopped caring about what others thought. He continued visiting her, and she continued being the quiet strength he leaned on. Together, they built a friendship that was deeper than gratitude, stronger than fear. Months later, the city held a small ceremony to honor civilians who had performed heroic acts. Lena received an invitation, but she didn't want to go. "I don't like being on stage," she said with a laugh. Mr. Hale encouraged her gently. "You don't have to go for them. Go for yourself. You deserve it." Reluctantly, she agreed. The ceremony was simple, held at the community hall. When her name was called, the audience stood and clapped. The mayor handed her a medal and said, "For courage that reminds us what humanity means." Lena felt her heart swell. She didn't see cameras or officials or crowds. All she saw was the little boy sitting in the front row, smiling proudly at her, waving his small hand. After the event, she went up to him and knelt down. "Did I do okay?" she asked playfully. He grinned. You were amazing. You're the bravest person ever. Mr. Hale stood nearby, his eyes glistening with quiet pride. You've become a part of our family, you know that, right? He said softly. She smiled. Family isn't always about blood. Sometimes it's about who stands beside you when life gets hard. He nodded. Then you've stood beside us more than anyone ever has. As they walked out of the hall, the sun was setting, the same warm orange light that had filled the sky the day she saved the boy. It felt like life had come full circle that evening, back at her home.